Hello everyone, Joseph Dunphy here. It's Thursday the 24th of July 2025 and this is your weekly Grass10 grazing management update on the dairy edge. The average farm cover for this week, very similar to last week at 656 kilos of dry matter per hectare, and the cover per livestock unit is sitting at 206. Growth of 54 and demand of 49. The diet roughly at the minute is consisting of about 14 kilos of grass and somewhere in around 5 kilos of supplement, either 4 a meal of one or silage or 3 a meal and 2 a silage. Pre-grazing yield is sitting at 1,502 kilos. Predicted grass growths for the coming 7 days again are quite variable. Parts of the southeast that are still a small bit restricted by rainfall amounts received are expected to grow in the region of low 50s for the coming 7 days, whereas the northern half of the country that has got adequate rainfall continues to grow strongly at between 75 and 80 kilos for the coming 7 days. Predicted rainfall amounts are much lower than last week at between 5 and 10 millimetres of rain expected for the east and the south, and 10 to 15 millimetres of rain expected for the west. Soil temperatures are probably back a degree, but are still quite high at between 16 and 17 degrees for the coming 7 days. The first item on this week's podcast is just to remind all our listeners that the Grass10 team and Pasture Base Ireland will host a webinar next Monday, the 28th of July at 7 p.m. to discuss all matters related to grazing infrastructure. 2025 is expected to be quite a strong year from a financial point of view for Irish dairy farms. So if you're looking for priority areas to spend some spare cash on your farm, 2 areas that you should spend it are on soil fertility and on grazing infrastructure. So this is what we're going to talk about in our webinar next Monday night. We will be looking at all things grazing infrastructure, discussing paddock sizes, roadway widths and condition, drinking troughs and pipes diameter, along with many other topics. So there'll be information for everyone on the night. So click on the link in this week's Grass10 newsletter or on our socials to register. Back to this week's situation. 43% of the farms that measured this week on Pasture Base Ireland are in grass surplus, when on average of 250 kilos of dry matter per livestock unit and an average farm cover of over 765 on their farm. And this is predominantly in the northern half of the country and on the western seaboard. However, some of these farms over the weekend received torrential rainfall and some paddocks were waterlogged. However, this has subsided now and the forecast is for lower rainfall for the coming weeks, so this should improve things. Grass growth has been strong again this week on these farms, and there's 1 to 2 paddocks immediately to be taken for surplus bales. We want to be targeting in around 180 for cover per livestock unit, an average farm cover of 600 to 700 at the minute. The dairy farms in surplus need to allocate 18 to 19 kilos of grass and 1 to 2 kilos a meal and keep an eye on rotation length at 20 to 21 days. If our grass quality is super at 14 to 1500, low meals should be adequate. Once again this week, even though rainfall has been received, 23% of the farms, mainly on the southern coast, are tight on grass supply with less than 160 per livestock unit. This is, as we said, mainly due to lack of rainfall, which is limiting grass growth. On these farms, rotation length must be held at 20 to 25 days, and if we can at all, try and keep average farm cover over 550. However, this may not have always been possible if growth was low on these farms. This will become an improving situation, however, now that rainfall has been received, but increased levels of supplementation will be necessary until growth rate has returned to greater than 180 per livestock unit. Fertiliser application should be brought up to date immediately on these farms. This week's featured farmer is Eoin Corrigan from Trim in County Meath. Eoin is milking 265 cows. The diet currently is 13 kilos of grass, 4 kilos of meal and 2 kilos of silage. Milk yield is 23 litres at 4.37 fat and 3.85 protein. Fertiliser at the minute is 27 units of protected urea every 30 days in a blanket spread. Farm cover is 551, growth is at 66, demand is 48, cover per livestock unit is 151 and the stocking rate is 3.66. Eoin notes for this week's Grass10 newsletter, he's become quite tight on grass over the last number of days and pre-grazing yield has dropped to 1200 kilos of dry matter per hectare. He's introduced a couple of kilos of silage and increased the meal from 2 to 4 to bring his cover per livestock unit back to over 180 as soon as possible. On the reseeding point of view, Eoin reseeded an out farm for heifer grazing and for silage on the 21st of May, got a red clover mix, and the heifers have taken 2 grazings off it since then. He received 3 bags per acre of 10-10-20 at Eoin, and he's very pleased with how it's performing so far. If you'd like to hear more from the Grass10 team, subscribe to the weekly Grass10 newsletter, which is available on the Grass10 page on the Teagasc public website, and the link to the newsletter is also available in the description of this podcast. We'd also like to thank the sponsor of the Grass10 campaign, AIB, Grassland Agro, Department of Agriculture, FBD and the Farmers Journal. This has been your Grass10 update, and I'll talk to you all next week.